Good morning, everybody. Council Member Nancy Van Rees here, Chair of the LGBTQ Caucus of the Nashville Metro Council. Because of some vocal issues, I'm going to pass the baton over to Vice Chair Brett Withers, who's going to facilitate today's meeting, and I'm going to help by putting up on the screen today's agenda and let you go ahead and get started.
All right. All right. Thank you, Chair Van Rees. I'll go ahead with the motion for electronic meetings. Pursuant to Governor Lee's Executive Order number 16 regarding electronic meetings, as extended by Executive Orders number 34, 51, and 60, I make a motion that this committee meeting agenda constitutes essential business of the Metro Council, and that meeting electronically is necessary to protect the health, safety, and welfare of Tennesseans in light of the COVID-19 outbreak. Do I have a second?
Second.
All righty, thank you. And then I guess I'll go through and call the roll. So Councilmember Bradford?
Aye.
Great. Councilmember Van Rees?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Councilmember Young?
Aye.
Great. And then has Councilmember Benedict been able to join us yet?
She's not joined us yet, but she's on her way.
Okay. I will go on to that motion carries. I will go on to the next item of business, which is the approval of minutes from February 26, 2021. Is there a motion to adopt?
So moved.
Great. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay. And for the roll call for that, we'll start with Councilmember Bradford.
Aye.
Councilmember Van Rees.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Councilmember Young.
Aye.
And just for good measure, just checking to see if Councilmember Benedict has been able to join us yet.
She is not here yet, Vice Chair.
Okay. Well, with that, this motion carries nonetheless. We'll move on to just a quick review of our items for discussion. We're going to include updates. And Chair Van Rees, just let me know if any of these are going to go in a different order for some reason. But first would be updates from the Mayor's office from Brendan Marshall. Second would be Mnpd Recruitment with Officer Cassandra Del Bosco. The third item would be the Metro Council Get It Right bill with Ethan Link from Southeast Laborers Union. The fourth item would be the Music City Prep Clinic. And then the fifth item would be a letter to the editor regarding trans youth. So those are the items on our discussion. Typically for our caucus meetings, we don't take questions from attendees per se, but folks are certainly welcome to email in. So having said that, our first item for discussion would be updates from Brendan Marshall with the Mayor's office, who functions as the LGBTQ liaison. And is Brendan ready to join and speak?
I am here. Can you hear me?
We can. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you for having me. Thank you for allowing me to speak first. I just really quickly wanted to mention two things. One, tomorrow, the Mayor's office, in relations to COVID-19, we are launching what we're calling a 50 by 5 campaign. And our goal basically is to have 50% of Nashvillians vaccinated by the month of May. So we're going to put that out on social media tomorrow. The mayor has mentioned it briefly today, but of course, we really just want to try and get as many people vaccinated as possible. The other thing that I wanted to mention tonight was it is that time of year again, and I am getting ready to try and up our score when it comes to the HRC MEI. I had a whole PowerPoint and my laptop is not working, so I'm sorry, I'm doing this on my phone. But basically, our score last year was 78, and there is an opportunity to try and get above an 80. I know that may not sound like A B, if some people might think of it as a letter grade, getting in the B range may not still sound good, but on paper, I know that on paper or off paper, Nashville to me is a little bit more inclusive than we look on paper. But I'm trying to see if we can score a few more points. And one way to do that would be to possibly amend our Metro's single occupancy, the bathroom bill that we have. It's the 2019 bill. Specifically, this is why a PowerPoint is helpful, but it's specifically Metro Ordinance BL 2020-485, and in that ordinance, section 2902 specifically says single user toilet facilities and bathroom bills and family or assisted use toilet and bathroom bills shall be identified by use by either sex. And I just wanted to bring this before the caucus. I'm sure you all are aware of the bill. When I was looking at the ordinance and the language specifically, I had asked members of my office and Metro Legal if it would be possible to amend that language and to use, instead of either sex, to use the words gender neutral or all gender if possible. It's certainly doable. And I just wanted to bring that solely right now before the caucus, just to give you an idea. One way, again, to raise our score would be to amend this bill. And we have the deadline to kind of turn everything into HRC is July 31st. So we do have some time. If, with that being said, I wanted to ask you all if you are wanting to consider this, maybe making an amendment by June, and maybe first and second reading could be in the month of June, third reading could be in the month of July. But there are, let's see what else. Instead of also just changing the language, it would also, the proposed amendment building code could apply to new constructions, and signage is the other thing. So it's nothing current. And that was it. So that is those were the two things that I wanted to mention. If we were to get all of this done and turn it in and then get credit, that category on this whole index is only 2 points. But in the grand scheme of things, it would mean a lot more for the future of our LGBTQ community. Of course, looking at what the state is doing, they do have a state bathroom bill, and currently that bill has passed all the subcommittees and it's about to go to the House. That is the latest on the state's bathroom bill that they have going. And that is all I wanted to say.
Well, thank you for raising that. During the last term, I actually had worked on legislation with regard to bathrooms, because the Metro Code used to say that if you had one bathroom, it could be unisex, but the moment you had two, it had to be for either gender. And I worked with Mike Jameson at that time to do something about it, which allowed, I want to say that what it stated was that it could be used, you just had to have signage saying who can use it, more or less. That's not the exact wording, but that we did something like that during the last term. And if you were to raise that to Mike Jameson, he might be able to figure out what we did at that time and what sections of the code that addressed, because it was 2 or 3 different places. But I mean, I welcome thoughts from others in the caucus, but I think that's something to identify. And frankly, at that time, we were able to avert state preemption, because we didn't require that you have like a gender neutral bathroom per se. It's just that we actually gave businesses and Metro government permission to do that, just as long as the signage indicated who could use it. It's the way that we averted state preemption.
Yeah,
so we sort of phrased it actually as a pro-business bill, because we're like, if you're a small business, you have 2 bathrooms, which are very expensive, you can decide who can use that. You know what I mean? It's kind of the way that we posed that to the state and got them to leave us alone.
That's always a good, okay. Thank you.
But that's my only thought, is if you would circle back with Mike Jameson, he might at least be able to look up that bill that we did, and it would highlight whatever sections of the municipal code we touched at that time. But I also really had thought that with the 2018 IBC code that we adopted, that it had updated language about for single-use bathrooms. I thought that it included that, but I could be wrong about that too. And so that might be something that could potentially be already included in the latest building code that we just adopted, or otherwise we might have to do a local amendment to that section of the IBC.
Okay.
But I appreciate you asking about it and would welcome thoughts from others, but I think it's something we should certainly look into. That's my vote. But do any other caucus members have discussion on that?
Yeah, I raised my hand. I think Brett touched on everything. Brett kind of took this to the mat already in our first term, and so he has an active knowledge as to what will work and won't. And I wasn't sure, Brandon, whether or not you'd already talked to Mike Jameson about it or not, because as Brett had mentioned, I think that having that institutional knowledge as to what has already happened could be really helpful. But I absolutely agree that any opportunity to be able to be more specific in regard to this language would be helpful. I don't know too whether or not you've excuse me, if you talked to the school board about it in regard to what their policy is, because that's probably a stickier conversation, but one that would probably need to happen as well.
I have reached out to Metro schools. Currently, they don't have a policy. Specifically, they basically follow building codes and new constructions. So if the city, I was informed if the city were to change the code, I'm sure that they would comply as well. But they don't have a specific policy in terms of addressing this language.
So for example, I mean, as they go to build the new high school in Bellevue, that there would be opportunities to be able to have boys' bathrooms, girls' bathrooms, all gender bathrooms, and a good example of how that work.
One of the things that from my past discussion with the school board back when we were doing the council bill is that I think the school facilities don't often have a lot of single user bathrooms anyway, other than faculty bathrooms a lot of times, unfortunately. And so the schools a lot of times work with students individually to figure out what works best for that student. In terms of identity of which bathroom that they will use for communal bathrooms. But a lot of times the number of single user bathrooms are a little bit limited. And a lot of times, and I think Brandon's right, is like one of the ways that you sort of avert a panic situation at the state is by focusing on single user bathrooms, at least to begin with, right? Yeah. Because then you don't have that privacy issue. So that might be a way of addressing that, is at least touching base with them about any single user bathrooms that they have in the school facilities going forward.
Yeah, I had tried to figure out a count, but they apparently they didn't have the number currently. They did tell me that they have 140 plus facilities. They were willing to figure out how many single use facilities that they do have. So I'll have to circle back with them on that.
Great. I mean, if you, I'd love to hear from Russ and Zach if they have some ideas, but I think that if you can come up with some language that Mike Jameson feels like can hold water, then this caucus would be more than happy to facilitate moving it forward, I would think.
Alrighty.
Do we have any other discussion on this particular topic from members present? Seeing none, we might be ready to cut you loose, Brandon.
Well, I appreciate it. I will circle back with that and update you guys, the caucus in the future. But I just wanted to bring that to your attention. I know maybe July might be here before we know it. Hopefully that this can be something. And I'm still learning, of course. I know you all definitely are very knowledgeable of this topic and others. So thank you for your time.
Thanks. And don't let your PowerPoint go to waste. Go ahead and export it as a PDF and send it on over to us so that we can have it.
All righty. Well, have a great weekend, Brandon.
Thank you all too.
All righty. Next up, we have Officer Del Bosco to talk about Mnpd recruitment. So, Officer Del Bosco, you're recognized.
Hello. Thank you so much for letting me be here. It's an honor. My pronouns are she, her. A little quick background for me. I was in patrol for 18 years at Hermitage Station before I came over to recruiting. My community has always been my passion. It was actually real hard for me to leave my people to come to recruiting, and I still miss my people. So once you get plugged into a community, they're your family. Also, I want to give a shout out to Nakia Reed, and our LGBTQ liaison. I know you guys already know her and that she's fantastic and amazing. We all love her. I'm pretty sure she's on vacation right now having a good time. I don't want to plug you guys with recruiting. My focus is obviously, yes, I left my information on the chat for joinmnpd.com, my cell phone for work, which is basically like a cell phone that I use every day. So if you need something, it doesn't matter to me if it's recruitment related, hit me up and I will promise you I'll get the answer or get you to someone that can. Even if you got something silly, like you've been in a crash and you got a question and you're uncomfortable and you want to talk to somebody, I'm here for you. That's why they gave us work phones, y'all. Also, I left my email. We have done a lot of things. One, I am a member of the LGBTQ community myself. So obviously it's, important to me, but the entire community is important to me, and diversity and our community, our police department must reflect our community. It is no longer something that we can just talk about like an idea. It is something we have to make happen. One, we're going to fall behind, and two, we're doing a disservice if we can't make that happen. And the more diverse we are, the better we all are, regardless. Police department, corporate world, doesn't matter. You'd probably all agree with me on that. I think the more people we bring to the table, the more voices we have, the more chances we have to listen and understand from different points of view. So let's see, we've something exciting. We have a new, I always say this wrong, so forgive me. Hijab, the head wrap. We now have a policy where you can actually wear that on duty. It is awesome. It is amazing. We've made it safe, so it can be worn properly and safely, and you can still be you and follow your guidelines, whatever that may be, and if you have to wear that. We're writing our facial hair policy, which is not a big deal to a lot of people, but to a lot of our guys that got to shave every day, they're pretty excited about that. We have almost, our tattoo policy is extremely lax right now, and we are trying to work on some piercing stuff. So I think that's most. Oh, we're also writing a transgender policy right now. I'm trying to include them as much as we possibly can, and trying to figure out how we're going to work that in to recruiting, to the police department, to all of that. So there's a lot of exciting things, a lot of inclusiveness, and any input that you guys have, because obviously we're going to hit some kinks, and we got to do things right, or we're not going to do it at all. So anything you guys have, email me, text me. I need all the help I can get. I do not care who gets credit. If it's you, I'm going to shout your name, okay? I don't need credit for it. I'm trying to think of everything. I think that's everything. Oh, I have never once on this police department ever felt discriminated against as a queer, lesbian, female, whatever title you want to put on that. I'm sure that there have been instances. You know, I mean, let's be realistic about that. But my family, my people, I don't know of any specific incidents, and the Metro has always been super inclusive. And, you know, we get in a lot of the pride stuff willingly. We let our people, you know, actually go to those with our support. And I know I've talked a lot, so I'm going to end here, but if you guys have any questions, and I'm going to hang out. You're still muted.
Thank you. Do any members of the caucus have any questions or comments for Officer Del Bosco?
I just have a couple of comments. I just think all this news about the updates to the hijab, to the shaving, so that we can be more inclusive to any sheiks in our communities, the inclusion of transgender policy. I think those are all great things and going to help our police department be more representative of who we are as a city.
Yeah, I think it's extremely exciting. And I think that as we looked at the recent study that was done in regard to population, having the challenge of 6% of the Nashville police force should be openly identifying as LGBTQ as an incredible goal. And to know that the caucus here and Metro Council, from what I can tell, have your back to whatever's necessary for self-identification so that you can actually measure that. And so whatever tools that you are missing in your toolkit, we want to see that happen. How many officers, how many people are employed now with the Metro Nashville Police?
So usually our number is around 1,500, where we want to say that, but that's not we're not fully staffed right now. I don't know that anybody is. I don't want to give you wrong numbers on how far off we are. But I do know that we are hiring. We never stop hiring. We have an attrition rate just like everybody. On a bigger police department like ours, we kind of kick ourselves in our own foot. I think that's the saying, sorry, because we do have a pretty high standard. And so the feds love us. Other agencies love us because they know that we come well prepared. There are better agencies. Yes, I'm not going to say we're the best. I do think we're pretty amazing. But so with that kind of stuff, when you're bigger, you do tend to lose different kinds of folks. But right now, we're running a lateral class and a regular academy class. So we're getting a lot of interest. And of course, when you're bigger, you're going to get more interest especially from other police departments that are smaller, that have less mobility. And we try to stay in the cutting edge of stuff. Sorry, cat time. Anything else?
If there are no other comments, we can give you a rest and go on to our next topic.
Hey, thank you again. You guys are awesome.
Thank you so much for joining us today and for your work.
Thank you, Cassandra.
All right, next up we have Ethan Link, who's going to talk to us about a legislative proposal. I don't think it might be on first reading at this next meeting. Is it on second already? Wow, okay. Well, I will let you go ahead and describe that bill to us and what we should know about it. So go ahead, Ethan. Thank you.
Absolutely. And thank you all so much for having me this evening. Only sorry it's the first time I've been here. And I will just take a quick privilege to put a separate hat on that. I'm on the Civil Service Commission as well. And I can tell you that, especially in the last several years, we've had under Dr. Gil Wright and as the Metro Health Director, and also with Shannon Hall as Metro HR, I know a tremendous amount of attention and thoughtfulness has gone into some of the things that Officer Del Bosco was talking about. So I think it's really exciting to see not just our police force, but our 911 operators diversify a lot more. There's a lot of really exciting things going on at Metro HR. So obviously, if you all ever have anything of interest to you in that capacity, of the civil service capacity, please don't hesitate to give me a call about that, because I'm very interested to make sure we're carrying our weight on those issues as well. But putting my Liona hat back on, and Stand Up Nashville hat. I'm Ethan Link, pronouns are he, him, and I'm the Assistant Business Manager for the Southeast District Council of the Laborers International Union of North America. All of that to say, I represent folks that dig ditches and tear down buildings and the service employees at Vanderbilt University. And so we are coming to you today to talk about the Get It Right bill. Everybody on here, I believe, has gotten a copy of it or a version of the legislation, and probably our PowerPoint. I've dropped in the chat a link to the legislation. And so everybody's kind of heard a description of it, but big picture, we got really inspired to do something about worker safety and the kind of contractors Metro is doing business with after the death of Gustavo Ramirez last summer. And he was not the first construction death that year. He wasn't the last. And unfortunately, only a few days ago, we had another construction death that we heard about. And I've talked to some of the folks around it. A 71-year-old traffic control operator was crushed by a dump truck. And this was the first fatality on a Metro project in quite some time. But it kind of goes to the point of what we've been talking about, which is, as standards have lowered and lowered in the commercial space, safety is beginning to slip even in the public construction space. And so our interest in bringing this legislation that a lot of you have already reviewed and you've heard my spiel before is to position Metro as the largest buyer of construction services in Davidson County, as a leader in safety and best contracting for training and apprenticeships, as a function of, in service of, I should say, improving our safety and our wage theft records and all of that. So it is a multi-part bill that tries to get at it all different ways, and wanted to bring that to the caucus. I know some folks have already signed on as co-sponsors. I've had great conversations with some folks on here about the contents of the bill, and I did want to make sure I'd answered any questions, but also made sure to let you know kind of the state of where the bill is. It is on second reading. We are anticipating that we'll be getting some feedback from the Associated Building Contractors and the AGC, the folks that represent contracting side of things. We think that you'll probably be hearing from them next week. We've already heard some stirrings that they've got kind of their materials together. So we know that there'll be a discussion, and we are a reasonable, LIUNA, as part of the Stand Up Nashville Coalition, is a solutions-oriented organization, but we did write this legislation to be a little bit of a modest proposal that would address what we could in the most careful way we could, kind of similar to how Councilman Withers just talked about the bathroom bills, trying to find not how to shoot for the moon, but how we can do the most we can within a state legal framework. So that's the approach we've taken here. And happy to talk about any specific facets of the bill and take questions.
I've got a question or just a brief comment. So one reason I wanted to add this to our agenda tonight and invite Ethan was me and him had a conversation about was there a way, or was it even possible, to add LGBT to this bill. The bill talks about ensuring that there's at least one female and at least one African American on this new the new makeup of this board. And if we want to have discussion on, do we want to add LGBT on that, or do we think that because the Human Relations Commission has a seat on there already, if that would be enough to satisfy our desire? Because I know one of the pushes of having this caucus is to make sure that we have as much representation of the LGBT community in our city government and how it acts as much as possible. So with that background, like I said, I wanted to have this conversation, see if the caucus wanted to go forward with that, how the caucus felt, or if we were happy with leaving it as is.
And if you wouldn't mind, if I could provide a little background on how we got to this legislative language, just briefly. The language that you see in the legislation that talks about having one female and one African American is not a new standard to this board. That was already the standard that was set in, I believe, the 60s or 70s when this board was originally composed. It used some outdated language in that section to describe that. And so what is in the legislation is a little bit of a cleanup of that. So we did not add African American or female as standards. So the standards from an identity standpoint have not increased. When we first started looking at that part of the bill, we considered, oh, well, as long as we're under the hood here, what are other concepts that we can talk about? And once we started listing, we got quite a few different groups that would have been interested in having a particular seat on the board. And so after kind of wrestling with that, I had a couple of conversations with the folks on the Human Relations Commission, because we know that they've been a champion and they are great honest broker for LGBTQ issues, for refugee and immigrant issues, for specifically Latino issues, specifically Kurdish issues. They've got that broad experience. And so we thought, well, here on a 7-person board, here's a good way to make sure that we've got a focused person on that board who's always watching for not just one individual group or section of groups, but is also coming at those from an intersectional standpoint too, right? Like thinking about how they connect. And so that's why we put the Human Relations Commission in there, just for background.
I appreciate Councilman Bradford raising that, and Ethan, I appreciate your reference to that. In my discussions with some folks, it may be a typo, or it may be that we were looking at a different version of it, but there was a little bit of confusion about does the legislation reference the Human Relations Commission director or the commission itself who would be placing a person on there? I think probably the preference is that the commission itself would vote on someone rather than the director, but there was a little bit of a wording in that could potentially benefit from a housekeeping amendment. But assuming that is the case, I mean, I love Mel Fowler Green to death. But assuming that is the case, I personally am kind of confident that the Human Relations Commission looks out for a lot of different diversity aspects in our community, rather than, sort of apportioning out, there are just so many different kinds of diversity, as we all know. And after you parse it out to a certain extent, it can actually be difficult to fill sometimes. So I'm comfortable with the Human Relations Commission appointing someone to look over those provisions, and certainly they can bring that back to the commission or to this caucus, which I believe that they would.
Yeah, my 2 cents are similar. I think that it would be good to see that the Human Relations Commission must appoint a designee that also serves on the commission. So it's not like the Human Relations Commission is going to find somebody and appoint them, but one of those commissioners would be appointed so that they're representing the commission. And I think that anything to clean that up, I think would bring some remedy to that. I think it's interesting that African American and female were included in the old language, and you're trying to kind of clean that up a bit, but it does sort of open this Pandora's box, and it's like, well, what is the makeup of the majority of the people that we're trying to protect? are they African American and women, or are they Latino and immigrants? And so it's very it's kind of this weird slippery slope. So I appreciate the fact that you're historically including it because it's already there, but adding the Human Relations Commission representation, I think is brilliant, and it's one of the reasons that I've signed on to the legislation.
I will say as well that in sort of my kicking the can on it with some folks and trying to anticipate potential objections, and we'll see what those are. But one piece of it that raised my ear, made my ears perk up a little bit from an HR background, is a little bit of a privacy concern with regard to employees in the private sector have different privacy protections or not than public sector employees. And one of the things about it is that sort of once you hand over information to Metro government in some capacity, that does become a public record, and Metro employees do not have privacy protections, basically. So that's one of the things that I'm kind of looking at a little bit more, and I'm sure we'll keep talking about, and I look forward to hearing what feedback we get from industry. But that is one specific facet about that, needing to maintain a 365-day record of who their employees are. Sort of, is there a way to, is that a major objection, number one, from a privacy perspective, which they would raise potentially, and number two, if that is the case, is there maybe a different way of handling that specific piece of it? But I think overall, there are a lot of things that I like about the legislation.
Absolutely, and if I could address that one point, one thing about the certified payroll section that I believe we're talking about is, and I can't remember, Councilman Woods, when it was that we last exchanged draft language, but the language I dropped in here should read that it would not; those records would no longer be maintained as the original draft we had would not be maintained at the Procurement Standards Office itself. So it would not be a public record. It would be, but the procurement department could request access to those records on behalf of the public, is the way that it's intended. And so that's definitely an issue, or a part of the code and the part of the bill that we're very flexible to be able to figure out a good solution for everybody. Yeah, and I totally hear you on that.
Great. Are there any other comments from caucus members on this so far?
I think Zach.
Zach, are you
speaking to us, Zach?
Yes, Zach? Oh.
If so, you're muted.
Okay, now I'm not muted. Just ignore the music in the background. I'm outside of an event that's going on. Sorry. Welcome to Nashville on a Friday night. Proud to say I am a co-sponsor of this legislation, and I certainly would love to have the support of all of the caucus on this, just from the equity standpoint of what this will provide for folks. And Councilman Bradford, I certainly appreciate the comments you were making, but y'all might be hearing the piano in the background, so I will get it back to mute, but I certainly hope others will join me in co-sponsoring this.
Yeah, we don't want any copyright issues.
One more thing I would like to just throw out there to folks is that there is a section of the bill that also is responsible contractor legislation that's going to make sure that we don't do business with folks who break federal law. Now, I don't know every single detail of this, but I'm going to drop in the chat a list of the federal laws that would disqualify someone if they broke this law to do business with Metro. And given some of the current makeup of our federal judiciary and government going forward, I anticipate that some of these laws are going to start being way more useful to protecting the LGBT community. And I personally hope they will be. And I think that if there's opportunity in the future, if there's other federal laws or guidelines or standards that we can include into this section of the code going forward, it would be something for the caucus to consider. I don't know if we've captured every law of that touches anti-discrimination, but we tried to do as good a job as we could. But this would be where you would want to put it in the future as a way to make sure we're not doing business with businesses that don't do business with our people. And so thank you all for, all of your time, and thank you for your support and your consideration this evening.
Thanks
Thanks
so much, Ethan.
All righty. So our next item on our agenda is Music City Prep. And do we have someone here from Music City Prep to speak to us, or someone to speak about it?
I will interject and say hold on one second, actually.
I'm getting seasick.
I'm sorry, we're going on a field trip. I'm trying to balance my schedule, folks.
You're good. We can hear you.
Okay, hello everyone. We had some folks from Music City Prep that were going to be speaking with us tonight. However, they had some other things come up and are short staffed, so they're kind of, they requested to be here next month, but I had asked them to be here because I actually last month learned that Music City Prep is this wonderful nonprofit here that provides excellent care at no cost. And they have some other exciting things they're working on, such as some community space for the LGBT community, which is something that, it seems forever ago now. I think it was, I know it was pre-COVID, and that's kind of how we time things in our head now, I think, like BC, before COVID. But I don't remember the name of the study, but Nashville Pride worked on something and said that something we're lacking is some safe, supportive, sober space for folks to meet and whatnot. And I was hoping Music City Prep would be here to kind of share with us. They recently purchased a building to work on providing a space like that, in addition to the great work that they are doing. So I say all that to say, stay tuned for her next month. But they were very regretful that they had some staffing issues that kind of prevented them from being able to join us.
All righty. And while we're all here, I'll add that building that was purchased is in District 6.
Of course it is.
Of course it is. It's at 11th and Fatherland. It's the former Bill Martin's grocery store building. In addition to Music City Prep clinic, there would be a community space and a potential outpost of Canvas. Although neighbors in that area have some noise concerns, because Canvas on Church Street can be a little bit of a noisier dance space, and folks on Fatherland Street have some noise concerns, because there are bars and restaurants there, but not that have loud music. So I did have a community meeting with Derek Tanner and Seth, the restaurant manager, and that was back last fall. And I'm continuing to work with Derek to try to iron out some agreements with the neighbors over there prior to that beer permit coming before the Metro Council. So stay tuned. But yes, we're excited to have that there. So look forward to hearing more about that in the future. The next item on our agenda is a letter to the editor regarding trans youth. And I didn't know which caucus member raised that one.
That's me. I know I'm not alone in the frustration of what's happening in the building behind me in the state legislature. And it's really, it's hard not to be reactive, to condemn what's happening. I wanted to see if this caucus would be interested in supporting a letter to the editor. I can work on it this weekend while I'm watching some basketball, but to invert that conversation and say, you know what, we as a caucus, we as a county, we as a city have your back. And regardless of the bullying that's taking place in the state legislature, we value you. And to have a positive comment put in writing for the record, because there's so much frustration, whether it's from the business community and talking with Joe Woolley earlier today, talking with the folks with Alliance Bernstein or Amazon, the folks that are just frustrated at the way things are happening, that we kind of dial it back to the person that's sitting at home hearing all this and wondering, you know, do they not think I'm a person? Do they not want me to be who I am? And I wanted us as a caucus to say, yes, we want you to be exactly who you are, and we want to celebrate it. And I think that we just need to kind of use the bully pulpit that the caucus presents itself to say something that's positive for kids to hear and for adults to hear, because quite frankly, if you took the word trans out of this legislation and just inserted lesbian and gay, it's like, okay, lesbian and gay people can't play sports anymore. lesbian and gay people can't do this anymore. It's like, we gotta realize that, they're coming for all of us, that and we need to recognize that. So I just wanted to, it was serendipity, that we're meeting tonight to be able to say, hey, let's do something. And I don't know what you guys have been thinking about. I'm sorry that Emily's not here to join the conversation, but I just think we need to do something that's positive. And yeah, I know some of these the folks that we're wanting to say this to are not going to watch this YouTube video. They might not even know who we are. They're certainly probably not reading the Tennessean every morning over a bowl of Cheerios. But we can get it in the universe so that whenever someone's searching online to say, who in Nashville cares that I exist, that they find us and they know that we care a whole lot. So saved my voice to be able to say that. And I welcome y'all's input on it.
I completely agree. I think just something from us as a caucus, united in support. A letter to the editor probably is, in this type of situation, the best route to go. And just to say that no matter what actions are taken by our state house, that we here in Nashville are very open, are very welcoming, do understand the unique challenges faced by trans youth, and not just trans youth, but all trans in our city and state, and that we're here, and that we're standing strong by their side. And I also feel like we need to include some of the language talking about how it's also confusing when you have some of these companies who write these letters saying that they are opposed to these bills, but then they're still giving money to these same legislators who they're disagreeing with. So I don't know how y'all feel about including that language, but I think we need to maybe have that conversation, and because these laws are going to keep being passed as long as these legislators don't feel the pain of it. And honestly, the only way for them to feel that pain is for that money to stop. So we need to really raise that issue of, it's one thing for companies like Amazon and Southwest to write a letter saying that these bills are bad, they don't support it. That doesn't help us if they're still giving thousands of dollars to these same legislators. So we need to have clarification on that.
Zach, you look like you were wanting to
Zach,
say.
you look, yeah, I was gonna say, you look like you're getting ready to say.
While he's walking, I will say you're presenting a different point of view than one that I was anticipating on this particular action. That the person we're talking to in this particular letter that I'm referring to is the citizen, not the legislators. As I said, it's really difficult to not want to be punitive and to talk about, why did Harold Love just walk out and not vote? Why are these things happening? How does lobbying work whenever companies, give to everybody in order to be able to talk to them? Those are issues that are very important, but separate from what I'm proposing. And I think Zach's in a quiet spot.
Yes, I apologize. I thought maybe I had said all the great things in my mind already for the night, but maybe not. So I don't disagree with the sentiments that Russ has expressed, but I think maybe for us, when we are speaking as a caucus, and I'm trying to think of the best way to word this, but I think that as a caucus, we should be for something and standing up for something, and maybe not getting in the I mean, I don't know that political is the right word, but the I don't really know how to say this, but maybe we need to when we issue a statement as a caucus or a opinion or letter to the editor, why is this bad? But I don't know that going and necessarily attacking or going after different folks is the right way to do it. And maybe I'm too influenced by Michelle Obama. When they go low, we go high. As tempting as it is. However, I don't disagree with the point that Russ makes, that several corporations that have said they are in opposition to this and they support our trans students and trans citizens and residents of Tennessee. It is problematic that they continue to financially support candidates and legislators that are working, against that and working against basic human rights, and the way I see it. So I'm kind of beginning to ramble a little bit, but I don't know. I feel like if we, as a caucus, feel like we're in a more powerful position when we can attach our names and our integrity to statements and letters to the editor that are, I don't know, maybe not so, and derogatory is not the word, but maybe not getting into the fray of, and maybe, am I making sense? I can't think of a better way to sort of say it, but I also do think it's important, kind of changing subjects a little bit, that there are, like Chair Van Rees mentioned, legislators in Nashville who were not there for the LGBTQ community. And when they come from districts that are nowhere near swing districts, it's very concerning that if we are going to support folks that run for the legislature, that they support us, and us means all of us in the LGBTQ community. And I've been really upset this week, actually, over some folks that I thought were friends, and that I was quite shocked that either voted present or walked out. So I guess I don't know the best way to, quote, call them out, and I don't know that that's the appropriate action, but I do think that we do need to say something as a caucus, because it's unacceptable to not have a spine, especially those who are members of the leadership of the Democratic Caucus, to support basic human rights. And I should probably stop, because I'm starting to, I'm on a soapbox, and I've been really upset about it this week. And so I will stop, but I think my point has probably been made.
Okay.
No, I think Zach is right. I mean, I usually try to, if I have disagreements with people, to at least raise it privately before I raise it publicly. So, you know what I mean? I think that for certainly the Memphis delegation is there, Livingston, but Nashville's delegation wasn't there either. And I think as Nashville citizens ourselves, that there's a proper venue for raising concerns to those elected officials about that position. I don't know that a letter to the editor of the Tennessean is it, though. But yeah, but I do like Councilmember Van Reese's idea of doing a letter to the editor that sort of says to people that we see you and we're here and we understand you're hurting and we're going to do what we can for you, right? I think that's a valuable thing to do. My one hesitation sometimes for trying to speak on behalf of communities of which I'm not a member, such as the trans community, is that whenever I can, I want to give that community a platform to speak, if we can, or at a minimum to sort of consult with them first and say, you know, like, this sounds good to me. How does that sound to you, right? So I think that's kind of it to me, is like, I hate to speak for a community without speaking to them and with them first. And it's hard to do that comprehensively, but that's the one caution that I have, is that wanting to be a good ally, and sometimes the best way to be a good ally is to lift up their voice directly, if we can. That's just my only suggestion on it.
It's fantastic. I think
I
there's
can
a couple of non-binary folks that we would want to maybe run the draft by, that kind of thing. But also the other legislation coming up, taking LGBT out of history books. It could present a situation to where, I mean, they're outlawing us from talking about our own history. So I think going through the legislation, making a few comments on it, asking Chris Sanders to review for accuracy, and engaging a couple of non-binary and trans leaders to take a look, I think is in order. But it's something that I would want to accomplish this weekend. Zach?
If I can jump in really quick, because I think my Surface, it's popping up. I think the battery's about to die. So something I forgot to say, and I did put it in the little chat, representation really does matter. And so at one of our recent caucus meetings, we were excited to have Representative Tory Harris and Representative Eddie Manis join us. And Representative Harris, a Democrat, and Representative Manis is a Republican. However, both of them are members of our LGBT community. And I think especially on the transgender sports legislation this week, it really proved that regardless of party and political views, representation matters. And Representative Eddie Manis was the only Republican to vote no. And I think it is worth stating that Representative Manis has more backbone than multiple members of the leadership of the House Democratic Caucus, including members of the House Democratic Caucus that represent a city such as Nashville or a city such as Memphis, that are supposedly progressive cities. And I for one, am very proud to, I certainly don't identify as a Republican, but I am very proud that in Tennessee, we do have a representative from our community that is on the other side of the aisle as myself. And and I'm certainly proud of Representative Harris as well, but I do think it speaks volumes that Representative Manis seems to be more aligned and care more and more honest with his values than, unfortunately, some of our legislators here in Nashville. And I'll say that before I log off and before I say anything else that might put a target on my head.
I just want to add, Brett was talking about, not talking about things until we, maybe run it past or just listening to other communities. So maybe one of our next caucus meetings, we reach out to Marissa Richmond and other members of the trans community and have them on. And, just like one of our first meetings was just a listening session with other groups, maybe have a listening session, invite the trans community, maybe invite some of the members of our Davidson County delegation to join with us and say, look, we'll mediate or moderate a listening session with the trans community and our Davidson County elected officials.
That's a pretty cool idea. I'll just take a stab at it, and Russ, never feel like your individual voice is somehow squashed. Do whatever you feel like you need to do for your district and for your concerns. But as a caucus, I think that taking the high road, I think is the way to go on this particular one. I really, it's not, I'm not going to get in the weeds on it. It's just going to be, hopefully won't take very long to write and to get some opinions on, but I'll circulate to that, to the caucus for input. Excuse me, still be looking for that over the weekend. It's not legislative, so we can talk about that amongst ourselves before we submit it. I know that Vice Chair Withers, you're facilitating this, but I do have one other business thing to take, if that's okay. And we lost Zach, I think, because his battery died. But I'm going to share the screen really quick. It's really simple. Councilman Cash has, his legislation coming up on third reading regarding inclusion on boards and commissions. And a constituent asked me to offer an amendment on third, which will require suspension of the rules, but to add or self-identified disability status. And he's agreed to do that. And so you'll see in the amendment packet, this with his signature and my signature on it. So I want to make sure you guys knew that was coming. I know that Councilmember Benedict got it done for us in regard to gender identity and self-identified LGBTQ. But disability status as an opportunity to be able to be self-identified is something that was requested, as I said, by a constituent. And so you're going to see that on in the amendment packet. So I asked for your support of it, and I didn't know any other appropriate way to make sure you guys knew about it other than this publicly notified opportunity. So thank you for your consideration on that.
All right, and then with that, I think the main item remaining for us, and I actually have a few backlog items that I need to work on this weekend as well for us. So I'll try to get to that time. We keep having natural disasters in District 6, so it's just like, when's it going to stop? So I will work on that stuff over the weekend too. I think the last remaining item of business for us is to set our next meeting date, and a lot of times we have been doing like 6 o'clock on a Friday, the last Friday of the month. Typically, is a proposal to do that at the last Friday of April? Would that be the proposal, or is there another date that is proposed?
Yeah, that works for me. That'd be the 30th. It'll be not a council week, and so I think that works.
And it's also not Mother's Day weekend?
No, it's the following. Mother's Day is the 9th.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, all right, that
It works for me.
okay. Well, we will consider that denoted by acclamation, I think.
Also, wanted to mention that as a matter of record, that Emily Benedict got caught up in something, but she's okay. I know that it was unforeseen that she would not be able to join us, but she'll watch the recording and offer her comments afterward. So.
All right. Well, are there any other items for the caucus to discuss at this time?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All righty. Well, with that, we stand adjourned. Thanks, everybody, and have a great weekend.
Thank you. And thank you for sitting with us, Cassandra. Enjoy your weekend. Stay safe. See ya.
Thank you.
Have a great weekend.